Hi friends, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. And it's Friday the 13th in January, and I'm just getting back to Dephemerember. A little late than never. I'm here because, one of the things I love the most about the Dephemerember challenge is that it starts in December, and the idea is that there's 25 prompts in 25 days with Louisa and Barbara doing videos every day, and it is so much fun. And even though some of us fell horribly behind, that I'm talking about me, you can still watch the videos and you can still enjoy it live and enjoy the surprise of what it was every day. And then in January, when things return to normal a bit, pick it right back up. So that's what I'm doing today. I am jumping back into the journal that I had made for Dephemerember. And it looks a little different than it did the last time I worked in it. I fell horribly behind in Dephemerember, but that's okay because I don't think the intention of that program was that you could only do it in December. Now I'm going to say Defember instead of December. Anyway, I think the whole point of that program was that even though it launched in December, you can revisit it anytime in the year to come. And the year before, the first year it launched, I tried to do it with a Christmas theme. And then what I found out is when I fell behind, I never went back into the Dephemerember series because Christmas was over and I wasn't thinking Christmassy anymore. So this time I did as Barbara and Louisa did, and I created a journal, which I'll link my video down below on that. And this was a very plain cover. So I just want to show you a few things that I've been working on when I've had a few minutes in my studio. I've come in and I've just played around with making this journal into more decorative. I've added some things to it. And one of the people on, I think it was the last video I posted where I pressed a lot of prompts together and admitted that I was falling behind. Jill from Jilly Bean Studio made a comment that she was going to turn her Dephemerember journal into an anytime art journal. And I thought, you know what, that's a great idea. I think what I'm going to do is, plus there's more than 25 pages in this book. So even if I had kept up and all 25 prompts were in this book right now, I'd still have extra pages. So what I decided to do was call this my Pieces and Prompts journal. And I just typed off a tag on my old typewriter. It's probably not going to fit. And I'm going to try to put it in this little nameplate that I had in there, this little plate that I put on, book plate. And then let me show you what I did. On the cover, I added an old doily and I glued it underneath the two pieces of elastic that hold my binding in. So you can see that it goes from it's all glued in on both covers. I really love how it looks on the spine and on the side and on the front. And then I put a little observation folder. I have no idea where I got this folder. It had observations stamped on it. And then I just added stamps and some colors that I really liked. For some reason, this teal blue is really popping in this journal for me. So I just added and did a little collage. And then the folder comes open. And I added a viewfinder slide as a pocket. I made a couple journaling tags out of a couple of the cards that Louisa had provided us in the free kit. And that becomes a tuck spot. And then I made a little pocket on this side with another journaling card and a see-through window and mushrooms. And this is glued to the cover with some textile in the back and a couple of charms that are posted that are pinned. One's a mushroom and one is just like a green color. And I really liked how that looked. So then when I come into the journal, what I ended up doing was in this front pocket, I put all the little extras from Dephemerember. I put the cards that we made and some of the things I'd curated for this journal so that it's always handy when I want to work in it. If I want to work on a prompt, which today is going to be the snail, I can go through my cards and look for my card that goes with that page. Probably should have had it pulled already. I had printed my cards out in 2 different sizes, so I have 2 of each card. That's why there's so many. And if I'm not using my card as the actual artwork, then I still have the card as well. So there's the 2 snails. I'm deciding to work on the snail. That's the other beauty of revisiting Dephemerember in 2023, is you can pick whatever prompt it is that you're feeling. And I am totally feeling the snail. And I'll tell you a little why about that in a minute. But I just wanted to flip through quickly and show you that I just added a couple things to my journal. I added a couple more pages. I printed out the Dephemerember really big and backed it and made it a page. And I had printed it out a couple different sizes, the prompt list, so I keep that in the beginning. And then I have some of the prompts that I did during Dephemerember. But then, because this is my Pieces in Prompts journal, I also did a prompt from Junk Journal January, Meg Journal's prompt series that's going on right now. It was perfect place to put it in. I also, so it's kind of, so I have a prompt from this program and then a prompt from, you know, Dephemerember. And then this was also a prompt from Junk Journal January. So it just really fits well together. I had a couple pieces of things I had been holding on to, like some ephemera that I just love. And I just am also putting it in the book because I think it fits well with the theme. And I may be able to use it with a prompt coming forward. So if I had a couple little things that I have made before that I thought fit really well, this was from a prompt challenge in 2021, then I just put them in because I thought this was a great place to start adding to that journal. This is where I ended up putting that huge prompt. So this was my prompt about Demy. Put that in there. So as you can see, I am going to use this whenever I am doing a prompt. I'm going to put a couple little magnets here to keep this closed. So I will continue to work in this journal. And today I am going to be working on what was prompt 19. Get my prompt list, fabric and page tab. And the reason I'm going to be working on this one is because we are going to be working with the snail. Now, a snail is something, a little creature that is very special to me and one that I take a lot of inspiration from. And as I'm journaling today, I'm going to be sharing with you a personal story about a pet snail that I had, as well as an amazing book that I just think is beautifully written and really speaks to the nature of why I love the snail. So I'm going to first, I think I'm going to make the snail first, and then I'll find a page for it. So I just received this for Christmas this year. Absolutely love it. Mushrooms and snails go perfectly together. And I will show you that when I say I love snails, I'm not just saying that for this prompt. I have them all over my studio. I have them framed on my wall. I have little tiny snail stickers and decorations scattered all over my studio, like these little guys on the pot. I am giving them as gifts. These were 2 that I got for Christmas. I have little ceramic doodads of snails everywhere. On my water bottle, I have all sorts of snails. I just think that they are so sweet, and I'll tell you why I love them later in this video. So I was thinking I would make the shell out of cloth, which I think at this point is not a new idea. I'm sure other people have done that, and I believe even Louisa has. I have this box of little tiny clips, fabric scraps, and I'm just going to look to see if there's any particular pattern that speaks to me for a snail. I mean, obviously this brown is very basic. I think it would be very sweet to have a flower on the shell of a snail. I like this. Snip has gold on it, which is pretty nice. Let's see what else. I don't know if I want to make a patchwork snail or whether I would like to make a snail that just has like a color on its, you know, like a couple colors on its. Do I want to go simple or do I want to go busy? Right? I could make like a shell that has strips on it, which I'll never know if I don't try, right? So let me take a very blank piece of paper, and I'm going to put down some glue stick, and the glue stick is just to keep the fabric from moving. It's not necessarily to keep it down because I'm going to sew it down. And I'm just going to rip a strip of cloth. That wasn't not at all straight, but maybe that's okay for the shell. This is the worst glue stick ever. I want to say this is like a dollar store glue stick that I got in a pack of something. All right. So I'm just going to lay down these strips of cloth, one next to each other, and just layer them, trying to make a little bit of a, I don't want to say patchwork, but I don't know. I just wanted to vary the fabrics a little bit. Again, I'm just using the glue stick to lightly stick them down before I put them in my sewing machine. And right now, anybody who is thinking about glue and a sewing machine is just shuddering, but it will be dry by that time. So now I have it, and I'm thinking, oh, let's put this little like piece of flower lace in the center that'll make that little pinwheel look for the snail shell. So I just put a little glue down just to, again, hold it in place, and I'm going to bring that into my sewing machine and try to make like that swirl shape of a shell. Oh my gosh, this is a hot mess. Like, it was not as easy to go around as I thought it would. So I'm just going to cut out the shape and hope that once I cut the shape, it doesn't look so wonky and bad, but honestly, I don't know that it's really going to improve much. I mean, I don't know how much it looks like a snail shell. There is some of that, you know, spin, but probably not as much as I would have originally liked. But I also don't want to give up on it. So I'm trying to think, maybe I'll go back in and see if I can enunciate some of these circles more. I don't know if I made lines. That would probably just make it look like a weird wagon wheel. So I'm not sure that I want it. The zigzag I like on the outside, but I'm not really sure. I guess I could do maybe one zigzag. Let's see if more stitches help it. Okay, I don't like it. And you know what? It's a somewhat interesting little something for another day, but it certainly is not worthy of what I'm thinking of as a snail shell. So let me think if there's something else that I could do. So I'm going to lay down a piece of canvas or duck cloth just as a background so we can see what I'm talking about. So here's a doily, and this circle is really what I had in mind. So if you're new here, you may not know that I work on and off at a estate sale company, and as a result, I end up coming home with a lot of little treasures I purchase after work, and doilies are a dime a dozen. Everybody in their mother at some point had a collection of these from their mom, their grandma, maybe they made them themselves. And doilies are not that popular anymore, so I hate to say this, but a lot of them go unbought and unused, and you know, it's really sad because every one of these are handmade things that people worked so hard on. And as much as it kind of pains me to cut something like this apart, I am excited to give it new life and think about the person who made this is probably not with us anymore, and nothing would make me happier in my legacy than to see something I made during my lifetime be used in someone else's art project. So I'm hoping that this would be a very welcome thing for the person who made it. So I was thinking more of a snail shell like that. I think that's kind of cute. Let's see what other little circles we can isolate. This piece here is just a piece. I like the circles on here too. I'm going to use some smaller scissors. I'll make it easier to snip it. I can be more accurate. Now, the snail shell can, I guess I could just clip that top knot off. Some of them are pointy and some of them are not, which is strange. So that circle's cute. That's a cute size. Let me snip one more. And this time, let me look at this. If I clip the tops of them off, I really don't know why some of them look like points and some of them don't. Maybe just the way that they connected. Well, let's see. So that's a little bit smaller. Then we have this huge piece. These were used a lot for tablecloths. I think of the amount of work this person put into this. So whoever you are, I respectfully use your handiwork in this project. So now the process is pretty straightforward. I'm going to take these pieces of doily, I'm going to lay them on fabric that I think complements them. I'm going to try to lay it in a way that some of the colors shine through, and then I'm going to glue them down. I'm going to then take scissors and try to cut out a circular shape that looks like a snail, and I will ink the edges to make the whole thing just sort of come together. So as I'm doing that, I'm going to tell you the story about my pet snail. It's not a story of a pet that I had as a kid. This happened actually not too long ago. So I was out getting moss because actually it was in the wintertime, and I was feeling a little bit down, and I just wanted to perk up my living space, and I thought it would be nice to have a terrarium. And we didn't have snow on the ground yet, so I went out to get some moss. I collected a whole bunch of moss to make a terrarium inside on my kitchen space. And when I got the moss home, I realized that I had a woodland snail in the moss. And I felt really bad because he or she, I don't really know if they have he's or she's in snails, was hibernating, and now I had disturbed this little creature. So what I decided to do was make the terrarium anyway. It was quite large, and I thought I'd make it a little habitat. So I put the moss inside, and I found a little like shell that I had, and I put water inside. I put a rock in places for it to hide, and I put it on the shelving unit we have on our kitchen that's sort of like in our dining area. And I named the snail Jeremiah. Why did I name the snail Jeremiah? I have no idea. That's just kind of looked like a Jeremiah to me. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed the company of this little snail all winter. It was the most fascinating little creature. It was, first of all, I learned that snails were nocturnal, or at least this one was, and it slept in very peculiar places. Slept upside down quite often from the top of the terrarium, and it loved lettuce. It loved greens and lettuce, and I absolutely adored feeding it and watching. It would eat itself silly, and then it would like sleep for 2 days, which I kind of admired. I'm going to take a time out here and tell you what I'm doing. You saw me put the doily on the cloth, and I made the little shell. And now I'm taking some handmade paper, and I'm just drawing out the shape of a snail. And that is going to be where I'm going to glue the shell to. So now that I've said that, let me get back to Jeremiah. So I tried many little scraps of food. I had looked online, things that snails ate. And Jeremiah was a very hearty eater. But nothing pleased Jeremiah more than paper. And snails love to eat paper. And oh my gosh, Jeremiah loved it too. The only problem was paper had a pretty bad effect on Jeremiah, an explosive effect. Let's just put it that way. So 2 days after eating paper, there was quite a mess to be cleaned up in the terrarium. So I didn't feed Jeremiah paper too often. It was about this time that I started really getting fascinated with snails, and I found this lovely book called The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. I'll put the picture at the end of the video. It's really a heartwarming book about a woman who comes down with, it's a true story, of a woman who comes down with a sickness, and her friend brings her a pot of wild violets, and there's a snail inside, unbeknownst to her, and the snail comes out and eats paper at night, and it's the only companion this woman has through her long sickness. It's a very quiet book, but I found it to be very beautiful and kind of heartwarming and inspiring about persevering when you have something very difficult going on. And I just really got to appreciate snails and their pace and their quiet companionship. So now I have my 2 little snails, and you saw me stamp them and ink them, and now I want to put on their little, like the little, I guess, eyes at the top of their feelers. And I'm looking for the right beads. And this whole project has just been a series of me experimenting, and sometimes it's been a hit and a miss, and quite a bit of misses on this one. And this is another one. I'm sewing on the little eyes and realize that then the eye effect is gone because the bead is now sideways. So I decided to cut it off, and I'm going to glue it on. And I'm totally getting Gary feels from SpongeBob SquarePants. Anybody else getting those feels? So I'm just putting a little dot of Fabri-Tac, and I'm going to put the beads in place, and I think they look kind of cute. It's a whimsical little snail, and I love the usage of old fabrics and doilies in it. So I don't know. I'm kind of digging the vibe of these little snails, and I could see myself making more of them for sure. I have my little bluish spring one, and then this like more orange, natural kind of fall guy going on. So neither one are Jeremiah, but they're the essence of Jeremiah. So I'm just gluing on the shell now and finishing up my snails. And I hope that makes sense a little bit more about why I love snails. I've just come to appreciate that they have their own pace, and maybe I need to learn from them that sort of quiet pace. And maybe I need to eat myself silly and then sleep for 2 days. Who knows? Okay, so now I have my belly band, and or what I think is going to be a belly band, and now I'm going to move it to the page and sort of experiment with what I'm going to do next. And in my head, I can see what I want. I want to see stitching, like their little path that they've kind of crawled somewhere. You know, snails leave a little slimy thing in their path. But I want to first highlight them on this mixed media piece. This is like a scrap that I made at the beginning. I don't know if you saw my first video preparing for Dephemerember. I made a bunch of scraps, and this is one of them. I'm trying to use like a watercolor pencil to make not the highlight, the shadow underneath the snail. And I don't think it's a Stabilo all, but I think it's just a water. It could be a Stabilo. I don't know. But it's just a watercolor black, and I'm making the shadow for underneath the snail. I just want it to pop a little bit more because I feel like the colors, especially on the blue one, blend so much. I think it's really interesting on this scrap that it's kind of blue on the top and yellow orange on the bottom. It really pairs well with these two snails. And I'm just trying to make a dark shadow, and I'm trying to drip the pencil down, the pigment down, and the pencil dries a lot lighter than it looks like right now. And now I'm just playing around with its position, and I have this piece of really cool textured paper painted on one side and not on the other. It's thick and cool, and I use my tab punch, and I'm going to take a little bit of glue stick just to keep it in place and throw some stitches on the top of this belly band so that I can honor the tab part of this prompt. And now I'm going to glue down my snails, as you can see. And I put some stitching on the belly band as well. I want to kind of look like a little trail, like that's the path that the snail took. I think you can see that. And now I am going to take that to my sewing machine, and I'm going to make another little trail, like these funky little stitches that are supposed to allude to the fact that the snails just went on this like little curvy path. It's cute, but I feel like something's missing. I know that the snails need to stand out a little bit more, and I don't know, there's just something that's keeping them from standing out. So I'm going to put a little bit more dark underneath them. I'm going to take my crocodile and throw in a eyelet and the extra little piece of orange cloth that I have hanging on my desk from when I made that funky, weird shape earlier. And it's kind of a weird color combination, but it works for me in some odd way. And now I'm feeling like, okay, I've honored the fabric part of this prompt, and I've honored the tab part of this prompt and the snail part of this prompt. But now I just need to finish up and make it work. So I found some snail quotes, printed them out, and now I'm putting on some coffee that I'm spraying onto them. And then I'm going to spray on a little bit of oxide, frayed burlap, and just making it grungier because I really feel like I need a sentiment. I feel like a sentiment is going to pull it all together. So here I am the next day in typical snail style, going super slow on this prompt. It has been snowing. I have a cup of peppermint mocha, and I'm hoping to finish up this prompt. So I did a few things. First, I took a piece of this natural paper. I have to say, I have a video and I'll link it below. If you're in the United States and you go to the dollar store, there are these unbelievable packets of paper that have offcuts of handmade and specialty papers, and they're $1.25 for the package. This was some of that paper. It's very, very, it's woven for sure. It's got a very high rag content and it's thin. I just stamped on it with my archival ink and then sprayed some oxide inks in some water and let it dry. It's very pale. I was thinking I would put this under this belly band as sort of a background. It blends, but yet I kind of like how their little trails go beneath it. I also really want to put a sentiment somewhere in here. So I printed off a bunch of quotes that I thought went very well with the snail. Focusing, there we go. Of picturing all the animals going to the ark in that story, flying and running, and the little snail just getting there on its own. Make small steps every day at your own pace. It's just sort of kind of goes with the snail idea. I also have the original card that Louisa made for us, which I might back and then put some of these sentiments on. And then, of course, I have this thing that went kind of wrong. And I could back that and put some quotes on and then just sort of make a little tribute to my snail friends. And this might be a great place to like journal about Jeremiah. So that's what I'm going to work on today. So now I'm just going to put the finishing touches on these pieces. I have this piece of diary paper, has the date, and it just seemed like a very appropriate little piece to use for a journaling card. And I'm just backing that oxide stamped piece I did. I'm also taking a piece of scrapbook paper and making a imperfect edge. I don't like straight edges at all. So I'm just putting that on and trimming it out. I'm just backing the pieces that I'm going to put quotes and journaling on. That's all. I'm taking that wonky piece and backing that. We don't need to see those weird stitches anymore. And now I think I'm going to journal about Jeremiah on the back of the long journaling card. And I'm going to take the sentiment, the one I decided on, and I'm going to put that on the belly band. So I just need to rip that out and ink it and then glue that down, as well as write my little story about Jeremiah on the back of that journaling card. So I'm just going to play around with the right spot for the words and the sentiment, and then I'm going to glue it down. And I really just don't feel like it stands out enough, so I'm going to put a little bit of black paper on the back, really just so those words pop. I want the sentiment to really stand out, and I think it needs to be balanced out. Something was missing. So I'm just gluing that on the back of the belly band. And I have this piece of gray paper that I'm going to put on the front of my journaling card. just because I feel like it needs another element on it. You know, at this point, it's just little tiny details. I put some stitching in it, and yeah, I just feel like it's about little details right now. I'm just finishing up this page and wrapping up my reflection on the snails. I'm going to put another sentiment on the back of the journaling card and on the back of the little, at this point, I think it kind of looks like a leaf. On the back of the wonky leaf, I'm going to put a little bit of stamping on there just so that the sentiment doesn't look like it's floating in the middle without anything that it's anchored to. And now the last thing I have to do is reflect on Jeremiah. And this is where I realize, as a left-hand person, how awkward it is to watch me write. I mean, I know it is, but when you see it on camera, you're like, wow. Left-handed people, I don't know how we figured out how to write, but man, it looks about as painful as it feels to write with the left hand. But anyway, I'm going to write my little story about Jeremiah for posterity. And one day when someone finds this journal, I hope they appreciate it. So here I am, finishing this prompt. I'm going to slide my page in. I'm going to slide my journaling sheet with my story about Jeremiah, or my reflection about Jeremiah, in. And then I'm going to put this quote down here, just peeking out. And I'm very happy with that. I'm happy with my little doily snails. And my reflection about, oh, I didn't put the last journaling card in. There. It'll all fit in together in my book and in my page. So that's where I'm at. I have this journal that I can now work in with prompts or pages when I feel the desire. I love how chunky it is and how imperfect it is. And I'm so grateful. I'm going to take these two little quotes and I'm going to tuck them in that front pocket. I'm so grateful that I started this journal because of the invitation from Louisa and Barbara, and I hope you enjoyed working in this journal in January. Until the next video, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you later. Bye. And in case you're interested, this is the book that I talked about in this video, The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey. It's a beautiful book about perseverance and about long-term illness. And it is a book that is comforting, I think, to people who are struggling. So check it out if it sounds like something you would like. By the way, just in case you're curious, Jeremiah was let go in the spring, safe and sound. I placed him under some moss in the back of my garden. And I hope he's still living there today. Thanks for joining me, everybody.